Hello there, everyone.
We're on air. Wow. I never
I
thought
think
this
I
day would
think we
come.
are on air, George. I think we somehow managed it. So, welcome everyone. My name is Brian Booden, and my colleague over here is George Beaton, and this is the first ever episode of the Data Mix. As you can see, we have a star guest titled down below here. We are going to bring in very shortly. But to begin with, George, I think it's only fair to introduce ourselves a little bit and to understand a little bit why did we start the data mix. So, what about you, mate? What have you been your motivations for getting this thing off the ground to start with?
I mean, how long do we have? So last year was an epic roller coaster of the Click virtual meetup. And I think that's what catapulted it. We always enjoyed doing the live events around about Scotland. And then we spent a year in lockdown doing this. And we had some fantastic guests. I think it all came to an end at Christmas. We had that huge blowout sort of 2 hour marathon with our highlight guest was the CEO of Click. And then all went quiet. But in the background, we were setting up the data mix. Yeah, I think the next year. Well, let's see where this goes. We have some big plans, but to kick off, what a fantastic turnout!
Yeah, I think kudos to all you guys out there. At last count, just before we came on air, I think we had over 300 registrations on LinkedIn Live. So thank you so much for that. And I think that pays homage a little bit to why I was really keen to start this project as well. Is that for me, I'm a bit of a geek, and what I'm wearing will explain that a little bit in a little bit of time as well. But
I meant
to
to be
be
the
able,
serious one then, wearing a shirt.
yeah, chalk and cheese, little and large, yeah, serious and funny, yeah. So I think a chance to work with new technology. I think it's awesome that been able to power this by Restream and not completely go in the wrong direction so far, at least. Hopefully, we're now streaming on 4 different platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So welcome if you're joining us on any of those platforms. And I think for me, the real driver behind the data mix was just to be able to talk to people in more depth in the land of data and analytics in a much more agnostic way than we maybe had a chance to when we ran QVMS. I think that was a big thing for me. That tools are great, and we're all allowed to say these things now. We can all say it's Click and Tableau and Power BI. These are all wonderful tools to have in your kit bag, but really we want to get to the core of data and analytics in terms of that sort of much grander picture. So for me,
Yeah,
that's a huge driver, and it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, to be sat here with you and get all this set up in the background. So it's
pleasure is
tremendous
all mine.
stuff, and I'm really really happy to be here. I may sound dulcet and low toned. Maybe Steve's got something to say about that, but it's brilliant to be here. It really is. Welcome
Yeah,
everyone to the first episode of the Data Mix. So I
thanks,
think,
Brian. I mean,
George,
data
without
is it.
any further ado, would you like
We've
to
got some
introduce
live
our
going
first
on here.
guest?
Love to. I think it's a bit of a coup that we managed to get Steve on for our first ever data mix. Steve, hot off the press, book has just landed in the UK. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. Delighted to share this time with the two of you. Thanks to Dalton Ruhr from Click for brokering the introduction. He's become a fast friend. We all have a shared passion here. So delighted that things worked out, and my publisher and their just-in-time delivery of the book to you today. So incredible.
Yeah, so this is a pretty incredible story, and those who haven't seen my post on LinkedIn already, literally about an hour before the call, the big picture arrived on my doorstep, almost like it was some kind of data visualization prophecy / fate thing going on. So it really makes it all worth it when stuff like that happens. So thanks again, Steve, for sending that out. It's great stuff. Great stuff. So I think to get us kicked off, I think we have a bit of a special title to get us kicked off, haven't we? And Steve, there's a particular element of visualization that you would like us to get us kicked off with. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So let me give me a moment to just get, things in order. Let me share my screen.
And just while Steve is doing that, we'll encourage anyone, especially if you're on LinkedIn Live at the moment, please drop us a line and let us know who you are. If you have any questions for Steve, we'll try and monitor that chat as we go along. But again, I'll pass it back over to Steve.
Okay, so with luck, I am now successfully sharing my screen.
Yes. We've just got
Look
it
at
coming up
that.
now, Steve. Yeah, there we
The
go.
miracles of technology. In any case, why the F do we see so many bar charts? Very briefly, my name is Steve Wexler. I'm the founder and principal of Data Revelations. I am probably best known as one of the three authors of the Big Book of Dashboards, along with Jeffrey Schaefer and Andy Cotgreave. That book is for the data visualization practitioner, people who are going to be creating charts and dashboards. More recently, my passion has been about trying to get everyone in the organization to have a certain minimal fluency with graphs. So there's a wonderful made-up word, graphicacy, that people who either cling desperately to their spreadsheets or who maybe have questionable ideas of what would make a good data visualization. So that is what has prompted the new book, The Big Picture, how to use data visualization to make better decisions faster. This may be of great assistance to the practitioner. I hope it is, and certainly to the newbie, but it's especially for people who are not yet convinced of just how transformative all of this can be. Also, both books are totally tool agnostic. Full disclosure, I'm pretty well known within the Tableau community, but my passion is about getting people excited about how wonderful data visualization can be to transform their organization. This certainly goes to Brian and George, but to everyone that's attending, you're encouraged to disagree with me. Good stuff happens as we debate these things, and you point out, wait a minute, I think there's a better way to show this, or I think there may be a flaw in your argument. So whether it be today or after the fact in the communication, we can blow up Twitter with some wonderful discussion, or LinkedIn. Happy to continue the discussion. In any case, kind of rhetorical question, if I were in front of you all, I'd say, hey, who thinks bar charts are boring? Okay, and a bunch of hands will go up, and I would argue, well, it's not the bar chart, it's your data that's boring. And I got to tell you, in my head, I hear one of my favorite comedians, Lewis Black. He's saying, it's not your bar chart, it's your data that's boring. It kind of has a cool way of spitting this stuff out. But let me kind of get you thinking, well, why do we see so many friggin' bar charts? What, is it just easy to make them? Why does that happen? So imagine you were tasked with trying to understand and visualize this data set. It's sales for 17 different categories. What's considered the quote unquote best practice? And kind of if you let your tool do what it wants to do, whether that be Tableau, Click, MicroStrategy, Power BI, this is kind of considered the bread and butter. But if you start experimenting with the tool and thinking, well, that looks kind of dry and boring, you might come up with something like this, the colored and colorful packed bubbles. Now, no doubt about it, what thing is going to catch your eye? Oh, it's the thing on the right. Well, that looks cool. But can you answer any questions effectively? Like, what's second highest? What's third lowest? How much bigger is this thing than that thing? And yeah, it may look visually arresting, but it's not really going to help you understand your data particularly effectively. While the thing on the left, well, it does. And it's because humans are inherently good at certain things when it comes to visuals, and they kind of suck at other things. And I want to try to drive this home. And I'm going to ask everybody to try this right now. I want you to try to estimate the length of that blue bar, and I want you to try to estimate the area of that teal or green or whatever color you want to call it circle. So if you have a minute, I take no more than 30 seconds. Go to bigpic.me/estimate. or estimate. And let's see how you do. And had we really prepped for this, we'd have the Jeopardy, think going on in the background, all just to have that going on in your head right now. So give this a try. It uses Google Forms. If your company locks you out from Google Forms, well, just do this thing in your head and see how it goes. And don't spend too long on this. Don't overthink it. Part of it is data visualization is supposed to make the stuff happen quickly. And I'm actually going to compute people's results as you do this, and we'll see how people did. So I'm going to show you the results as of, I don't know, last September, showing people are way better at the bars than they are at the circles. But let's see how this group did. So I'm going to update the data. So this is, so I've done this thing for a year and a half. I've gotten 3,894 responses. What you'll notice here is only 39% of people are getting the circle right, but almost twice as many are nailing the bar. Also, look at all the wide spread of guesses on the circle, and pretty tight guesses on the bar. By the way, I checked with Brian and George, hey, okay, if I use this tool to show this, they said, hey, no problem. And I'm sure you could do this in Click and Power BI.
You could. I noticed we've got a couple from Click here on. Hi, Jillian. Hi, Dalton.
Yeah, hey, Jillian.
And hey, so this group is, we've only gotten 10 responses from this group, in the time that I've given. So it's not so you're quite a bit better with the circles than most. And it just speaks very highly of Click users. But if we look at all responses, but also your people who are on this right now are probably into data visualization and have probably thought about this quite a bit. So it's pretty telling that just how poor, and most of the people who have taken this are into data visualization, and it kind of points to what we're trying to do here. Let me give a shout out to Andy Kirk, who wrote the wonderful book Data Visualization. This is a very erudite and articulate way of putting this. The representation and presentation of data that exploits our visual perception abilities in order to amplify cognition. Let me simplify this, and I certainly don't want to dumb it down. It's why not in data visualization take advantage of what people do well and avoid what people do poorly? And circles have their place, but they're terrible for providing accurate estimates. I used to show these circles side by side, and then I saw Professor Matthew Kay, University of Michigan, do a presentation where he put one inside the other and said, all right, you're all going to overthink it because you're in the data visualization, but what do you think most people would think? What percentage of the bigger circle is the smaller circle? And most people think it's 3/4. Look, I even know the answer, and I think that looks like to be about 3/4. It's half. That is 50%. The light blue circle is half of the dark blue circle. We're just not good at estimating the area of circles. Doesn't mean don't use them. Put them on a map. It can be really valuable, but they're just not strong for making accurate comparisons. Well, part of my goal is to start to get people excited about what data visualization can do. I hope everyone is on board with that. And I can't really explain who this character is. I had a longer presentation if you would read the book, but let's just say this is a composite of every client that I've had over the last 15 years that clings desperately to their spreadsheets. And I want to try to win them over to what data visualization can do. And I want to discuss the highlight table, or as I call it, the gateway drug to data visualization. Look, part of the whole reason you're looking at numbers or data visualization is trying to glean insights faster. Right? Here is a crosstab or a spreadsheet. Got 4 different regions. I've got 17 different product subcategories. I will ask people, I want you to tell me which combination of region and product subcategory is the most profitable, which is the least profitable. And it takes people about 20 seconds And a lot of people get it wrong. This is a hard task. You got to go through every number sequentially. In any case, people, eventually will find there's the highest, there's the lowest. Suppose I could do something that would allow you to see that instantly in 3 seconds and still allow you to keep your numbers because you just love your numbers, right? You love seeing the security of them. Well, that's where, if you're an Excelian, you would call this conditional formatting, but it's also called a highlight table. And bam, look, the thing that's dark orange really stands out. The thing that's dark blue really stands out. And you can see a whole bunch more with this. Look, tables in general is doing poorly, but binders and accessories is doing really well. That was very hard to tell with just the numbers. So hopefully you've gotten someone excited about, this highlight table thing kind of works. Well, let's take another example, and then I got to tell you what the data set that's really behind this is. But technical support calls by day of week and by hour of the day. And it's easy to see, there's a lot of pocket of activity here, but very little activity here. Well, suppose I have another question. Not what is the hour of the day and day of the week, but overall, what hour of the day do we get the most calls? When do we get the least calls? What day of the week do we get the most? When do we get the fewest? Oh, that's kind of hard. So I'll say, hey, suppose we put this marginal histogram around here. And it's easy to see, what's the longest bar? What's the shortest bar? Now, they may argue, well, wait a second. Can't you just put totals in? And although they're usually pretty excited about seeing these things paired together. Yeah, we can put totals in, but what are we doing here? Well, then it's the same problem we had before. We're going through this huge sequence of numbers. If we try to color code them, you get into a problem with, well, the totals are so much larger than what's in there. But even if that weren't a problem, let's just look at comparing color. Let me just look at 10 a.m. versus 11 a.m., right? I can see that 11 a.m. is about twice as big as 10 a.m. How do I know that? Because in my head, I know 1376 is about twice as big as 672. Here's a great exercise to test the potency of your data visualization. Take the numbers out. Can someone still read it? Can you tell me that 11 a.m. is twice as orange as 10 a.m.? Of course you can. Now try the same thing with a bar chart. Take the numbers away. It is pretty easy to see that 11 a.m. is twice as big as 10 a.m. Here's a quote from a famous guy. I'll tell you who it is in a minute. We can say that one shade is darker than the other. That is obvious. But to say that it's 2 or 3 times as dark is not visible. It's not readable. That was said by Charles Menard, that guy. And if you haven't seen this chart, trust me, at some point in your journey, you will. In any case, getting back to that first question, why the F do we see so many bar charts? I want to, towards the end of 2019, maybe it was 18, I watched this really fun Eddie Murphy movie on Netflix. Dolomite Is My Name. Let me give you the setup for a pivotal scene in it. Right? Eddie Murphy plays Rudy Ray Moore, who is a stand-up comedian. He's traveling the country behind his comedy albums. He decides, man, he doesn't want to be doing one-nighters behind this. He wants to finance his own movie using advance royalties. He makes the movie, and his record company says, you may owe us for the rest of your life. He makes the movie, but no studio will distribute. Moore rents a movie theater for a single late-night show. The show sells out, but there's no distributor. Cut to next scene where we see a sleazy head of a studio who had no interest in distributing the film. That's played by Bob Odenkirk, Better Call Saul. In any case, he picks up a copy of Variety, which is the trade magazine, and he starts looking through a column of numbers. He sees something that astounds him, sees the movie that's responsible for it, looks up at the screen, and then says, what the F-ity F? Gets a big laugh. Well, would you have seen this? Here is my attempt to see what was shown on there. Okay? Can you see something amazing going on here? You have to look really hard in this thing. You have to be motivated to look at this. Now let me make one change to this thing. Tell me you don't see an outlier. Do I have to hit you over the head with it? I think you can see this right now. Maybe I'll do something like this. If you can't see it at this point, this is probably the only thing I can do to get you to notice the thing I desperately want you to know. In any case, so why do we see so many bar charts? Because it gets us to what the F-ity F so much faster. Quick thing, there are alternatives to bar charts that play into what humans do well, which is judging length or position from a common zero baseline, or in the case of a bar, it has to be a zero baseline. Case of a circle, it doesn't. My friend and co-author on the Big Book of Dashboards created this wonderful visualization, bar hopping themes and variations on a bar chart. It doesn't just have to be the dour heavy bars. It can be things like this, like this, like this. Gee, do we have any? Yes, we have a lollipop chart here, etc. As long as you're playing into what humans do well, and humans are remarkably good at judging the length of bars or the positioning of dots from a common baseline. And with that in mind, I will stop sharing and kind of cue things up and get people thinking about how to get people to maybe be thinking about how this can help unearth things in their data a little quicker and more easily.
I think, Steve, that's absolutely fascinating. And the real answer to that question of why the F do we see so many bar charts is because it's the right chart for a lot of situations. And, the bar chart is considered boring at times, but I wanted to tap into one of the things that you were asking about, because I did notice this when I read through the book. And it was about the perils of the zero baseline charts. Now, zero baseline charts I find are really interesting because they always seem to rear their head at the most important times, right? It's always at election time that these charts come out that show you the massive disparity where they just drop off 80% of the base value to really accentuate, especially when one of those channels maybe is supporting one political party more vigorously than the other, shall we say. So what are your thoughts on the perils of like zero baseline charts and when to use them and when not to?
Well, I am really dying to educate the world about when charts are misleading. And look, Alberto Cairo has written an entire book on this, How Charts Lie. But it is really easy to take advantage of what people see well and manipulate them. So it's really easy to see, oh, that looks to be about twice as big. Oh, that looks to be about 5 times as big. You're good at that. But suppose the item is 91% versus 94%, but instead of which means they're almost the same, right? One's just a little bit more than the other. But instead of starting at 0, you started at 89. And it looks like the big one is so much larger. So unless you look at the number, and I'm saying, look, the whole point of the data visualization is, can you take out the number and understand it? So if you look at the number and see, oh, it's, whatever I said it was, 94 versus 91. If I look at the bar, it looks like 10 versus 2. It looks like it's 5 times as big. So anytime I see this, it means either the person doesn't know what he or she is doing, or they're intentionally trying to mislead. If it's with a bar chart, this is almost, I can't think of a case with a bar chart where you would ever truncate the value axes. With a line chart, with a connected dot plot, gap chart, etc., I could argue maybe you really need to do that. And there's a discussion in the book of when I think it's okay to do this. And I'm saying me, there are others who may disagree. And when I think it's oh my gosh, it's essential that you not start the thing at 0. Why are you starting at 0? 0 has you should be starting it at 35. Think of the temperature of the temperature of a human being. And I do an example of this, of some little kid that has a fever, trying to show, should we be very concerned about the kid's fever? And I purposely chose Celsius scale because each degree has so much more packed into it than the Fahrenheit scale. And that 2-3 degrees difference in a child's temperature or global warming, is huge. A 0 baseline makes no sense at that point.
Yeah, I think that's really valid, George. I think you're next.
So I'm going to go back to the visualization, the picture of the guy with the cigar that you showed in your presentation, Steve. And I think his quote is, "You can have my Excel when you prize it from my cold dead hand." this is something that we come across in the industry time and time again. And I would say at least twice a week, I will be sent a spreadsheet with a dozen tabs on it, full of numbers. And I'll be asked to make sense of it. Of course, I will import it into a data visualization tool, and then I will make sense of it. But what you find is that there are CEOs, there are CIOs, CFOs on a day-to-day basis running their business on tabular lists of data. I'm curious as to, your book talks about how can you change your. I think one of the chapters is called "How Can You Change Your Organization with Data Visualization." But how do you actually get them to take that first step?
Look, it's not easy, especially since they're probably uncommonly adept at this. But even if they're uncommonly adept at looking at a whole bunch of numbers and being able to glean insight, they're still not going to be nearly as fast and accurate with good charts. So part of the book is trying to get them to realize, oh my gosh, we're missing the boat. And there are other organizations who are good at this and have adopted data visualization and have made it a priority throughout the organization. They're going to eat our lunch. We need to be good at this as well. The other thing is, and by the way, you could open this up to everyone here, and the two of you have insights into, how do you get people to realize that they're missing such an opportunity here. The other is, no one wants to come off as being stupid. Maybe they're not comfortable yet reading a scatter plot. It's hard to imagine we all live and breathe charts. I use the joke saying, hey, I'm a professional chart looker at her, that I spend so much time looking at these things, I'm comfortable with it. But no one wants to be, rather than say, hey, I don't understand this waterfall diagram, which is not an obvious read the first time you've seen it. Someone has to explain it. Hey, it's okay to ask, gee, I don't understand this. Can you spend, half a minute with me, bring me up to speed, and making it okay to ask that question. But the odd thing, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling a little bit, is I don't think it takes that long to get to kind of a baseline level of fluency with graphics. Being good at creating them, oh gosh, I'm spent 15 years on this, and I'm still looking at stuff I did 2 years ago and go, oh, I could do a lot better now. And I'm sure 2 years from now also, oh, I have a better way of doing it. So this is an art that we're constantly going to be practicing. But the fundamentals of how to read a chart and recognizing when they're bamboozling you, I think you can get people up to speed really quickly with it.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's something that should be taught from a very young age. It feels like a fundamental skill, like reading and writing. I think just to kind of name check Click, they did a lot of good with their data literacy program in that respect.
Agree.
And
George Morrow was the champion of that, and I know I'm also going to give a shout out to one of my friends and colleagues who has a website, dataliteracy.com. So I think that entire initiative, and kudos to Click, who've been making it a tool agnostic initiative, which is, hey, let's just increase the graphic literacy of the world. My goal is to just make the pie bigger. Much bigger. The tool vendors can figure out who, the slices of the pie, and who gets what. But everyone benefits from having a much larger pie.
Yeah, and of course, it's just as important to know when a visualization is lying to you or misleading you. And I think nothing's been more prevalent than that. We have seen visualizations in the news every single day for the last year and a half. I think longer if you've also been involved in the Brexit debate in the UK. But charts have become a thing that news organizations, governments pump out every single day. So actually understanding them and being able to translate them and understand when they're misleading, I think is a hugely important skill.
George, I want to amplify something, but also I'm seeing a dear friend and colleague saying Tableau also has a tool agnostic e-learning course. So, and Mark's one of my favorite practitioners and friends in this wonderful community. There were two things that you're so right about Brexit, and also the whole coronavirus and certain charts going mainstream, and the Financial Times and John Murdoch in particular's work. But I never thought that the index chart would become go-to chart, and I never thought that logarithmic scales are there's a reason this thing goes 1, 10, 100, 1,000, etc. And it's the only way that you can understand the rate at which transmission is increasing. And I was very surprised to see this thing. That has never cropped up in my practice of having to deal correctly with logarithmic scales. This is now affecting every human on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, and I just have to tag on to some of the pie comments that are flowing through in the chart there. Steve, you might be aware. We introduced another Steve, Stephen Redmond, and we had quite an enlightening debate about pie charts in one of our previous podcast episodes. So I did actually want to ask you, what is the correct way to use a pie chart? And just as a carrot to dangle, is the correct way to use a pie chart something like this?
Yeah, this is because
it's the only way to use a pie chart, right?
This is pie chart nirvana. Not going to get much better than this. There are some other examples that we've seen, the pie I have eaten, pie I've not eaten, and things like that. I've got a little. Can you indulge me for 2 minutes?
Absolutely.
All right. Give me a second. Let me share my screen again, and I'll give you my thoughts on pie charts. And pies have their place. This is not that place. And in fact, I give this a scaredy cat icon in the big picture. That's just an icon so that if you're, thumbing through the book and you see a chart and you're wondering, is this something I should be emulating or avoiding? If it has a scaredy cat icon, it either means someone is misleading you or this is not as effective as maybe you'd want it to be. And the issue is, well, let's say we're really curious about tables. How big a percentage of the whole is tables? Let's just focus on that for a minute. It's kind of hard to see. Some of you may be in tune with this and can say, I got it. The interesting thing is, if I rotate this, so it starts at midnight, I can see instantly it's a little less than 1/4. That's a really quick and easy read, which is why these measuring cups from Welcome Industries are so frigging brilliant. I don't have to look at the number that's on them. 1/4, 1/3, half whole, easy. So a pie chart is really good with a very simple part to whole relationship. Comparing slices, man, that's impossible with a pie chart, unless there's one really big slice, etc. If you're focusing for a long time and going, which is bigger, machines or copiers? Darn, I wish they had put a number in there. Come on, you're missing the point. Whereas if I do this as a bar chart, it's really easy to see, machines is bigger than copiers. It's instant. But where I like to do is I'll try to pair these things. So here is a bar chart. Suppose you want to know what part to the whole is California. Select California. Instant read. I can see this thing, it's a little less than 1/4. I'll select these 7 different states. A little less than 1/2. Now notice it's just one pie, 2 slices. So now here's the cousin, the donut chart. I have no problem with this. You could take the number out and see, I'm a little less than halfway there. This I have a problem with. You take the numbers out and trying to compare those things, it's really hard to judge the length of the arcs. Also, I've got north, south, and east. Where's west? West crushed its goal. It's over 100% of goal. How do you show that with a donut chart? You don't. But it's a super easy read with a bar chart with a reference line. And I can even see very quickly, without even looking at the numbers, oh, north is about twice as big as east. So there's a thing that kind of looks cool, but you're spending a lot of time studying it. And here's the thing that's easy. Final one is, hey, here are the actuals versus percentage of 100%. Bunch of things I can see instantly. I can see that in the East, chairs is twice as big as copiers. I can see that tables overall is eking out machines. Can I tell anything from this? Not a chance. This is and I'm taking simple examples. There's only 2 slices in this thing. This thing gives me useful information. This other thing, not so useful. So pies have their place. By the way, maybe the best thing I've ever, if people have not come across it, there's a wonderful pundit. He tends to be very dogmatic. His name is Stephen Few. But I think 2006, 2007, he wrote a brilliant piece. This is his Sergeant Pepper. It's called Save the Pies for Dessert. I encourage people to read it. And I used to just blindly follow that recommendation. I have since lightened up a little bit. I think pies have their place, but it's 1 pie at most 3 slices because, man, it's just so easy to see that part to whole relationship. And that's why the measuring cups work well. But it's a very entertaining read. Stephen Few, Save the Pies for Dessert.
That is fascinating stuff, and I love how we didn't go anywhere near a 3D pie chart there with lots of slices. That would have just been too much of a rabbit hole for us to go down in a 1-hour session. So that answers my question quite succinctly.
And Stephen Redmond, I see, is saying, yes, you could use the gauges to show things going over because the 100%. I still think you're running into harder versus easier comparisons. But ultimately, I would defer to what is most going to help my audience. And I will try to argue that we're trying to get to insight faster. But if there's something that they find is easier for them to get, I'm okay with that. And then I'll hit them really hard in the head.
Steve, some of these visualizations, I've been through your book. Your book is fantastic. And if you don't like reading, I'm just saying this to the audience, if you don't like reading, buy this book. There's a lot of pictures. There's a picture on every page. But some of the visualizations in there are fantastically simple. But I'm not sure if I could quickly recreate one of these in one of the go-to tools of data visualization choice. Do you have any comment about that? Do you sort of spend a lot of time working on the technical background of how to pull together a really good visualization?
So fair point, which is sometimes it's to what degree am I constrained by the tool that I have? Hopefully, the community that has your back on this. So, hey, I'm trying to make a such and such chart, and I don't see how to do it in the tool I'm using. Can someone help me with this? Usually the biggest problem is you don't know what to call the chart. I saw this really cool chart. I don't know what it's called. It's a reverse histogram with a 3/4 twist. I don't know. So knowing that it's you mean a connected dot plot or a barbell chart or a dumbbell chart or a gap chart. How do you make that? Some of it is, gee, will my tool allow you to do that? Look, we probably all had discussions about maps and alternative forms of maps, like, how do I make a gridded cartogram, and can I even do it in the tool that I'm using? part of it is don't let the tool necessarily dictate what you want to do. And the other is get help from the community saying, how do I make this or something like it? And if you don't if you can't do that exact thing, maybe there's something that's close and approximates that. And Greg Lewandowski, who submitted a wonderful example for the book. I have a bastardization of somebody's saying, simple is good, simplistic is not, because it suggests you've you made things over simple. So making things clear and easy for somebody to understand, who doesn't want that? But dumbing it down so that there's some important nuance that's missing, you don't want that to have happen. So Greg has a fun example that's in the case studies in the back of the book. So Greg, thanks for joining us.
And I like that. In fact, I think I'm probably guilty of cheapening charts, as in I'll put several on a page quickly. But if you spend a lot of time working on a single good visualization, and then that's a visualization you keep wheeling out, then a single visualization on a page can make far more of an impact than 4 or 5 smaller charts not necessarily working together.
But by the way, the getting exactly, look, you're never going to get exactly the right combination of things that's going to strike the perfect chord all the time. But I have what I guess is now my guiding principle in all of this. I don't know if I call it a mantra, but I would say that all of us who are practicing this craft, we're here to provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. Now, the least amount of effort is for our audience. For us to make it easy for them, we may have to work really hard. So George, you're saying, hey, I put together these few graphs. I was able to do it quickly. And you were able to glean some insight and find something useful. Now it's, all right, how am I going to curate this for my audience? They may not be able to read this as easily. What can I do here to make it a little simpler for them? And that can be very challenging. So people should not be discouraged if, boy, it took a really long time to get this thing so that the people I was trying to get this got it. That makes any sense.
I got it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got it. Good.
Yeah, get it, got it, good. Yeah, all sorted. Yeah. I mean, I want to tag on the back of that as well and just understand a bit more what you think about crossing the line with like core visualizations to bespoke visualizations, right? Because there's a bit of a line here in terms of infographics and telling a particular story with a bespoke visualization. So where do you see that line, and do you ever recommend that you cross that line from moving out of your core scope of X amount of charts, whatever X is that number? Because I know some really great visualization artists who design bespoke visualizations for a particular purpose to tell a particular story. So where do you kind of sit on that side of things?
So I'm going to quote my esteemed writing partner, one of them on the Big Book of Dashboards, and say, it depends. Okay, and just as I don't want to give things away, I know there's going to be a reveal of a badass piece of clothing in a little later. He has a T-shirt that says "It depends," and I can't answer that question easily. It depends on the audience, the intention, where it's I tend to work with internal communication, creating graphs and charts and dashboards that are going to be used to a known audience versus this is an infographic that's going to be in Wired magazine. And the pressures that are on the designer, remember, someone's thumbing through a magazine and something has to make somebody stop and not turn the page. And it may be, boy, I need to make something which is visually arresting or has this amazing headline. Turn this page and you will die. Ooh, you better not turn the page. So different types of audience. The other thing I would say is some of the best amongst us, and I do not put myself in that category, have ridiculous design chops, but also flawless analytic abilities. And that they managed to create something which is beautiful, engaging, without compromising the analytic integrity of the chart. And I just love that. By the way, Alberto Cairo kind of falls into that category for sure. Lindsay Poulter, one of my favorite practitioners, absolutely falls into that category. Kelly Martin, who sadly died a few years ago, was in that category. That said, I absolutely emphasize aha ahead of ooh-ah. So I want people to get the aha. And if you get that first, information before decoration.
Yeah, we actually had that one lined up, didn't we, George? Focus on the aha, not the ooh-ha. So you got in there before us, Steve. But I think you make a really good point there. It really is down to circumstance with that kind of thing. So
I'm seeing something in the chat. My apologies. Can I just comment on it?
Of course, yeah.
Jason, Stephen Few and Edward Tufte are often put together. I found Stephen Few's work quite a bit more helpful for my practice than Edward Tufte. The book, The Visual Display of Quantitative Information, is from 1983. There you go. And it's this really seminal work by Tufte. My problem, and I'll get in trouble for this. Well, he's already banned me from following him on Twitter. What else can he do? Is that I've seen a failure to connect the dots between what's covered in that book and covered in workshops, and then what people need in everyday business. And it's one of the problems that I have with holding up the Menard chart from 1869 showing Napoleon's doomed attempt to conquer Russia between 1812 and 1813 is the Mona Lisa of all data visualizations. Is trying to connect that with a modern practice is pretty difficult. So kind of looking for things that are aware of a modern business audience and what can help them. So there's some wonderful books out. Cole Nussbaumer Knaflich's book is one of my favorites. That's really geared towards the modern practice. She wrote Storytelling with Data. So, and also, by the way, Show Me the Numbers from Stephen Few, and Now I See It. Those were really helpful early in my career. They were kind of the anti-Tufte for me. Tufte was speaking to an academic audience, and I said, I don't get this. While Few was, here's how you use charts and graphs in a business context. So that's kind of my take on it.
And I'm just going to latch on with one quick more one on that, Steve. And that just ties into, so when you are designing charts and dashboards for businesses, another key question that comes up is, interactivity or clutter. So it's not that long ago where when we had a dashboard, it was fed to us, and it might as well have been on a piece of paper because it was just a collection of charts. Now, over the last sort of 5 or 10 years, we've really progressed to the point where everything that we do can be selected or narrowed or filtered. So how do you, when you're going through that process with businesses, how do you decide between that interactivity and the level of it and not having clutter on a dashboard? Because the amount of examples we see of very large cluttered dashboards that don't drill to the insight is still pretty pertinent in today's industry, I would say.
I would say as well. And what you'll get is, imagine 24 months of data, 3 or 4 different lines, and every point on the line has a number. Because I need to show every single number. Well, you don't. You probably, just need to show the highest or the lowest numbers, but kind of trying to wean people off of this notion that I need to see every number for every point, but it's overwhelming. People can't take it in. The other thing that I'm trying to evangelize is corporations would do way better if they printed less and clicked more. That you want to know that exact number, hover over it. Want to know that detail, click it. Because if everything is in this static format, I have to give it, all those things you're asking for, and it can be overwhelming. So the decluttering uh, I think you can declutter without the interactivity. I just think the interactivity is, hey, you showed me this thing in the static state, and it's great. You did a great job curating it, but I want to know a little bit more about this thing. Oh, I'll just give you, 4 or 5 more pages to the thing. And oh, but somebody else wants something else of detail. So suddenly you have this, 100-page deck of everybody's particular combination of things, which is, hey, here are 3 key things I discovered. Here are the highlights. You want to know something that's not one of these 3 things? Go to this dashboard, click.
Yeah. I think one of your examples in your book illustrates that really well, and it's with a stacked bar chart. And again, it's with the zero axis. And how do you? It's great, comparing the first thing in a zero in a stacked bar chart because it's all on the zero axis. But what if you want to know the second or the third or the fourth thing? Without interactivity, there's no way to kind of take that down and push it back down to the zero axis to understand how to deal with that. So.
Precisely. By the way, a stacked bar chart, if you think about it, it's just a cubist pie chart. Think, that the slice that's against the baseline, that you can, you part to the whole, and you can compare the slices along the baseline. The segment is, the stacked part that's along the baseline, but the other parts, and it's the same thing with the pie chart. The thing that starts at midnight, I can see, is it 20%? Is it 50%? Is it a little less, a little more? But any of those middle slices, it's really hard to compare. But if you move them to midnight and go clockwise, it's super easy. So I'm a stacked bar chart is just a cubist pie chart.
Fair enough. That is a fine element for it to end my interrogation into that question, George. So over to you. I'm floored. So.
Yeah, so I'm conscious we're getting up to the end of the hour, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to jump onto. I've got another call, unfortunately, because I could do this for hours yet. But I just want to end one question, just with a little more about you, Steve, before we do a sort of final plug on your book. What you've kind of hinted at your journey. In this last session a little bit, but what brought you into data visualization, where it became such a big thing in your life, a problem you wanted to solve?
A desperate need to supplement my meager income as a full-time musician. That if you look at my you go to Data Revelations, and by the way, I'll be doing the brief plug at the end of this with your permission, where people can download a free sampler and stuff like that. But my website is Data Revelations. That's also my Twitter handle. And if you go to About, you're going to go, oh my gosh, this guy has did he study computer science? No. Did he study software engineering? No. Mathematics, statistics? No. I studied music. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in music. But I got into computers to supplement a difficult, trying to make it as a full-time musician, and I got totally intoxicated by them. Ran my own software company, founded a startup, couldn't keep funding it. And then for the first time in my life, 15 years ago, I got a job someplace else. Was hired as the Director of Research and Emerging Technologies for the e-Learning Guild, an organization that's passionate about using technology to help people learn and perform better, and came in with this idea of doing survey data, but making it live and interactive. And that's where I kind of discovered all these things. By the way, I came in saying, oh, I know just the tool we should use. It's amazing. It's called Spotfire. And this is 15 years ago. And they said, wow, before we invest in anything, why don't you look at any other tools that are out there? And I did. And my main reason at the time for adopting Tableau was Tableau had undo. Spotfire didn't. And I really need undo. I make a lot of mistakes. So that's kind of what got me into all this stuff. And I was really breathtakingly bad at it. If you look at some of my early work, and I absolutely share that in my workshops, you're going to go, wow, least likely to ever get good at this stuff. It's a cluttered mess, more decimal places than you need. Every point has a number on it, and say, this is kind of how it started out, but you can learn how to do this to make it much clearer to people. So that's my odd way of how I kind of got into this area, and thoroughly enjoy it. The people who are excited about using this to get people to see things that they didn't see before. Oh, what a high you get from that.
I can see that. So you kind of stumbled into it in a way, but then you realized you were good at it and had a passion for it and made something of it.
I had potential at it. Also at the time, I look at my early work and I cringe. Look, from the Big Book of Dashboards, which was mostly written 5 years ago, and there's nothing in it that has me wince, but I look at it and go, oh, there's a better way to show this. If I were doing it now, it's not like that's wrong, it's incorrect, but there's even a way that's a little more compact, less space, and that I think we'll get to aha even faster. So, and that's kind of the excitement of this. And I know I'll be looking at the big picture the same way at some point and going, there's a better example here, better way to show
I think
that.
we can all look at our old work and cringe and think of better ways. This is
absolutely
the problem of the digital age, isn't it? It's so easy to be reminded of what you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Google Photos is reminding me every day what I was doing 5 years ago, how much of a bum I was.
Well, George,
Cool.
I know you have to escape very soon, so I think this is the opportunity for you, Steve, to plug your book, which I believe was made available on Amazon UK today. Is that correct?
That is correct. So here is where people can get. So here is the big picture, and if you go to bigpic.me, you can download a free e-sampler of it, and there are links to where you can purchase the book on Amazon US and Walmart US. But if you just look up The Big Picture on Amazon UK, you'll probably have to put some other word in there, because there are a bunch of, there's a book called The Big Picture about the Bible. Okay, this is not about the Bible. So either put The Big Picture Data, The Big Picture Wexler, but it just became available, I think, Friday in the UK. So hope you will check it out. But if you want to try it before you buy, just go to bigpic.me and you can download. And let's see, do I have my, and here's where you can get more. So this is where you can find me at Data Revelations, and happy to continue the discussion. Brian and George, this was delightful to get to chat with the two of you and get to meet you. And thanks to Dalton Ruhr at Click for brokering the introduction. He was right that I would have a blast with the two of you, and I have.
Great.
I think it's been absolutely tremendous, Steve, and I love the way that you use the analogy of your book in your book a lot to talk about the big picture and the real context as well. That's the last thing I want to say, is that it's been fantastic to have you. You've been a pleasure to work with, and the only thing, there's only two things that remain to say from me, and the first one involves me zooming my camera out a bit, because someone asked me, how serious are you about the data mix? So I'm just going to see if this actually does its job to begin with, and my camera readjusts. And I'm actually just going to slide back a little bit as well, just to see if you, oh yes, there you go, full view. So this is the start of a merch chain for us now, supposedly. If you want a data mix hoodie, just let me know. Probably no one, but there you go.
Hi, Brian.
We got to plug it, haven't we, Steve? We got to plug it. So,
hey, I have a good. Speaking of in the mix, I've got a good possible debate that we can have the next time around. Best whiskey: Irish, Scottish, American, or Canadian? Discuss.
Yes, and
I'm going to say your words. It depends. I like the Irish.
We don't have another 3 hours, and Iron Brew is not even in the conversation, which is what I thought you were originally talking about when you talked about this on Friday. So, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you, and we would love to have you again in the future. I can see a lot of love in the chat there, so thank you again for making our day and being the first guest on the first episode of the Data Mix.
Thank you for having me.
The last thing, just to mention from our side, is that we are committed to this, and as such, we have already arranged episode 2 of the Data Mix. And George, I don't know if you want to say a quick word before you have to disappear, but Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer, pretty epic follow-up, I would say.
Scott, I would say Scott's a friend of the show, although this is the first episode. We had Scott a couple of times on QVMS last year. Fantastically funny guy, lots of good things to say. And I'm thoroughly looking forward to having him on the 23rd. I think it'll be a very entertaining and informative session.
So we're planning to run approximately every 2 weeks, but like I say, have a look at us in the LinkedIn group for those that have joined already in the episode 1 event, and we'll be passing all those details on in LinkedIn in very short time indeed. So I guess the last thing to just say is thank you all for attending. We're 1 minute over now. This is all going to be available for replay on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, eventually Spotify as well. So it was a pleasure to have you here. George, any closing words?
Just from me, thank you so much to the audience for supporting us on this first foray into the online digital world, restreaming, etc. Can't wait to review all of the comments. I could not keep up, but thank you. And Steve, thank you so much for giving us the pleasure of your time for the last hour.
My pleasure. And I'm seeing my friend Trish on the comments as well. And she made a reference to Maxwell's Silver Hammer. So the Beatles are near and dear to my heart. So thanks for noting that. I did see it in scrolling by, Trish. Thank you. And thanks again, gentlemen.